It was a rainy evening in 1925, New York City. The streets shimmered with a glossy sheen under the faint glow of streetlights, and the sound of jazz music spilled out from behind closed doors. Inside the Velvet Note, one of the city's most exclusive speakeasies, the air was thick with smoke and the clinking of glasses. Hidden behind a bookstore, this underground bar was a haven for flappers, gangsters, and thrill-seekers. Detective Arthur Gray pushed open the heavy velvet curtain that led to the main room. Tall and dressed in a trench coat, with a fedora tilted just so, Arthur's presence commanded attention. He wasn't there to drink or dance, he was there on business. A murder had occurred at the Speakeasy the night before, and it wasn't just any murder. The victim was Vincent the Viper Moretti, a notorious gangster with ties to half the illegal operations in the city. His body had been found slumped in a booth, a single bullet wound in his chest. Arthur walked up to the bar, where a sharp-eyed woman with dark bobbed hair was polishing glasses. "Evening," he said, flashing his badge. "I'm Detective Gray. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" The woman raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "I'm Clara, the manager. What do you need to know?" "Let's start with last night. Who was here, and did anyone see anything unusual?" Clara set the glass down and leaned on the bar. "We were packed, as usual. But Vincent came in late, around midnight. He had his usual booth in the corner, ordered a whiskey, and stayed quiet. That's not like him. He's usually loud, bragging about his latest business deals. Then, about half an hour later, we heard the shot. When we got to his booth, he was already gone." "Who found the body?" Arthur asked, scribbling in his notebook. "One of the servers, Millie. Poor thing's still shaken up. She's in the back, if you want to talk to her." Arthur nodded. "Did anyone leave in a hurry after the shot?" Clara's lips thinned. "People panicked, sure, but no one ran off right away. And we're careful about who we let in here. You have to know someone to even find the place." Arthur thanked Clara and headed to the back room, where he found Millie, a young woman with tear-streaked cheeks and trembling hands. She recounted how she had approached Vincent's booth with a tray of drinks, only to find him slumped over. She hadn't seen anyone nearby, but mentioned a strange man in a gray suit who'd been sitting alone at the bar earlier. He'd disappeared shortly after the shot. Arthur's next step was to examine the crime scene. The booth where Vincent had been killed was cordoned off with police tape. The table still held an untouched glass of whiskey and a pack of cigarettes. Arthur's sharp eyes scanned the area and noticed something odd, a matchbook with a logo that didn't belong to the Velvet Note. The logo was for the Golden Peacock, another speakeasy across town. Pocketing the matchbook, Arthur returned to the station and ran a background check on Vincent's associates. One name stood out, Eddie Malone, the owner of the Golden Peacock and a known rival of Vincent's. Arthur decided it was time to pay Eddie a visit. The Golden Peacock was a stark contrast to the Velvet Note. Where the Velvet Note was dimly lit and intimate, the Golden Peacock was bright and opulent, with gold accents and a large dance floor. Arthur found Eddie lounging in a private booth, surrounded by cronies. "Detective Gray," Eddie said with a sly smile. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "I'm investigating Vincent Moretti's murder," Arthur said bluntly. "Care to explain why his body was found with one of your matchbooks?" Eddie's smile faltered. "Vincent and I had our differences, sure, but I didn't kill him. He came by a couple of nights ago, looking for trouble. We exchanged words, but that's it." "What kind of words?" Arthur pressed. "He accused me of muscling in on his territory. I told him to get lost. He left, and that was the last I saw of him." Arthur didn't believe Eddie's story entirely, but he had no proof to hold him. As he left the Golden Peacock, he couldn't shake the feeling that Eddie knew more than he was letting on. Back at the station, Arthur pieced together the clues. Vincent's sudden silence at the Velvet Note suggested he'd been uneasy about something. The matchbook indicated a connection to Eddie, but there was no direct evidence tying him to the murder. Then there was the mysterious man in the gray suit, who remained unaccounted for. Arthur decided to revisit the Velvet Note. This time, he asked Claire about the matchbook. She hesitated before admitting that Vincent had been meeting someone secretly, a man she'd never seen before. She didn't know his name, but described him as clean-cut, with a thin mustache and sharp eyes. "Did they argue?" Arthur asked. Not loudly, but Vincent didn't look happy. Arthur's gut told him this mystery man was the key. After some digging, he discovered that a man matching the description had been seen frequenting both the Velvet Note and the Golden Peacock. His name was Charles Whitaker, a small-time con artist with a history of playing both sides in gang disputes. Arthur tracked Charles down to a cheap hotel on the Lower East Side. When confronted, Charles confessed everything. He had been hired by Eddie to plant false information, making Vincent believe one of his own men was betraying him. The goal was to sow chaos within Vincent's operation. But when Charles met Vincent at the Velvet Note to finalize the scheme, Vincent saw through the ruse. Panicked, Charles had shot him with a pistol Eddie had supplied. With Charles's confession and the pistol recovered from his room, Arthur had enough to arrest both him and Eddie. Justice would be served, and the streets of New York would be a little safer at least for a while. As Arthur left the station that night, the rain had stopped, leaving the city streets fresh and quiet. He lit a cigarette and took a deep drag, his mind already on the next case. In a city like this, there was always another mystery waiting to be solved.